This week here on the Storycraft Society, we are doing another D&D prop video. And it is worth noting that this episode is going to be perfect down to the very letter. If it's not obvious, we're doing, that was the joke. It was letters. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft... Hair on the lens. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society, and this week we are going to be doing another D&D prop video. Now, my whole shtick with D&D props is that I, A, absolutely love them, and B, I really like the ones that are very simple to do, but drastically increase the player's engagement in the game. And I think that letters, notes, whatever you want to call them, are the perfect way to do that. And I think this is maybe the essential thing for all dungeon masters that they need to make for their games. Now, when I say letter or note, I don't just mean something that is a letter or a note. It could be a lot of different things. It could be a wanted poster. It could be a poster that the players find on a notice board that get them into an adventure. It could be a note that the characters find that gives them some insight as to what is going on inside of the big bad evil guy's organization. All of these are examples of these paper printouts that you can make to give your players that they will absolutely swoon over. Real quick, let's talk about some of the things that notes like this can do. Things like deliver information to the PCs in a way that when you as a DM explain it, it feels like it's you're talking out exposition, where the note can deliver it in a way that feels more real inside the game. It could be something that gives frame of reference. I think this is something that DMs don't do enough, which is to show the bad guy's perspective. Everyone wants to be the hero in their own story, so maybe the bad guys see the player character party as bad guys, and using notes and journal entries and things like that, you can show that back to your players, how their actions are perceived by someone else. So today we're going to be covering 3 examples of this. I can obviously think up a million more, and if this is something that people really enjoy, I'd be glad to make more videos on it. But today we're covering the easy 3. Without anything else said, let's just jump into it. So the first one that we're going to be talking about today is the noble letter. This could be a decree made by a king so that it lets the players know where they are allowed to or not allowed to go, or some law that is being put into place. This could also be an invitation or something directly from a noble to the players. This could be something that it's like, I invite you to come to my castle for this big feast in your honor. So there's a lot of cool options with the noble letter. So we're going to be making 2 of these today. One is going to be a little bit simpler, and one is going to require you buying just a couple more extra things. You can decide which value is worth it. So we're going to start by writing both of these out. So as soon as I pull out my computer to begin starting to write a letter or something like this, actually real quick, I should mention it is okay if you would like to handwrite it. I just have terrible handwriting, and so therefore it's easier for me to use Google Docs or something like that in order to make these. So anyway, so when I pull my computer out, I like to first start thinking about a few things. These things are font, language choice, and format. Font will tell a lot to your players, more than you think it will. If you use a really scratchy, rough, nasty font, it will look like someone who is hastily scribbling. If you use something that is very ornate and overdone, it will look like someone who really took their time with it. That's subtle information that your players will get from you, even if they don't realize that they're getting it. For these noble letters, for my font, I'm going to choose a very flowery cursive print, as well as a very scripted top print to catch the player's attention. Next is language choice. How does the person who is writing this note or letter feel, think, speak? Those things are really important. Do they use a lot of foul language? Are their sentences short and punchy? Are they talking down to the person that they're writing this to, or are they talking up to them? Language choice is very important in setting the tone of these pieces. So when I was writing out these 2, one, I picked that it was talking out to the people en masse, and then one, I chose to make it more that they are directing it directly at the players. The final one is format, and format is just one that I enjoy playing with. Do you want it to look like it is a poster that is meant to be hung in the town square? Or do you want this to look like it is a letter that is being delivered directly into the hands of your players? I personally chose to do one of each because I think both are interesting. And as I typed these out, I just made sure to follow those 3 guidelines to eventually get the final product. So once I had that done, it was time to print these out. Now, you could just use regular paper, and a lot of the techniques that I'll explain a little bit later in the video, you can use to make even white computer paper look a little bit more antiqued and parchmenty. But I found, while at Michael's this week, a really awesome cardstock that is made to look like parchment paper. I made sure to buy up a couple of sheets, and that's what I'll be using for these first 2 noble letters because I want them to feel really rich and engaged. So I'm going to take those and I am going to print those out, and automatically, just by using this paper, I will say, it makes it that you don't have to do a lot of work to them, which is a great, awesome thing. But then everything that I do on top of that will make them look even better. The next thing that I needed to do was get the paper ready and looking even that much more parchmenty. So the way that I did that was I pulled out my scissors and I cut around the outside edge to get rid of all of the square lines. No faster way to make a piece of paper look modern and not antiqued than to have it be a perfect rectangle. And then the next thing that I did was I made the paper wavy. The paper as I bought it was very flat and very smooth. So what I decided to do was take some water out and just basically wring that over the whole piece of paper with a wet paper towel. I let that kind of soak into the paper and then I dotted it off. I let that water seep into the paper and kind of warp it in places so it's not just perfectly flat. Once I did, I let it kind of crinkle up into my hands and then I let that dry. A very easy way to take a modern piece of paper and make it look just a little bit more like parchment. Basically, these are now done, which is awesome, quick to do, and they look great. But the next thing that I needed to do was seal them up. So I have 2 ways that I like to do my noble letters or decrees or whatever. The first one is I use just a piece of ribbon. You can just get wrapping paper ribbon, or if you have just some lying around, that's great. That's what I did. I just went into the Christmas stash and I grabbed a red ribbon with some like gold little frill on it. And all you have to do is just tie it around the piece. And it turns out like this. Very easy to do, looks great, and your players will be excited to unwrap it when you hand it to them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're very cute. Yes, you do. The next one is a little bit more expensive. I say a little bit because I was actually shocked as to how expensive it was to get these 2 things. I paid $8 for the wax and $8 for the little stamper. I got those from Michael's as well, and to me that was outrageously expensive. I couldn't believe it. And then all I had to do was just light the sealing wax, let it drip down onto the paper, and then use the stamp to seal it all up by pushing it into the wax. Trick tip, make sure you put enough sealing wax onto the thing, because if you don't, it will come apart. Let's try this again. Noble letters are a great way to let the characters know that forces that are higher in station than them are watching them and interested in what they are doing in their domains. This can always be positive or it can be negative, but noble letters are always a very easy and cool way to hand something to your players at the table, and those props go a long way. With that said, let's move on to the next one that's a little bit more skullduggery. So maybe your players have made the wrong person mad. This could be a leader of a thieves guild or some mercenary company, but either way, your players have made them a little upset, let's say. Maybe they send one of their agents to take a dagger and just stab that bad boy right into a pillar on the inn where the players are staying. This should send a message, at least I would think so. So, we need to make that now. Let's start repeating the same steps we did for the noble letters, but with this new scenario in mind. For this one, the font I'm going to pick is something that looks more handwritten and kind of scrawled. It implies that it's coming from someone who never had penmanship courses or the money to be able to afford penmanship courses, and so it's going to be a lot more handwritten style of a note. The next thing is it's going to be my language choice. It's going to be way more direct, way more clear, absolutely no flowery flourishes in the language. If you run a game that is more adult and you have a lot of adults that are okay with adult themes at your table, you can use foul language. That is a absolutely exceptional way to let your players know that this is someone who comes from a part of society that uses that kind of lingo. For me, A, this is a YouTube video, so I'm not going to throw anything like that in there, but two, I wanted to keep the language direct and imply a small amount of intelligence from this person. I wanted to keep it direct. The final thing that I thought about was format. So I used the clearest, straightest forward format that would be very easy to read, like the person made sure to just write it quick and only break up the things that they had to break up on purpose. So with that done, I printed it out and it looked like this. Now for this note, we had to do a couple of things to get it ready. The first thing that we needed to do was we cut it out just the same way that we did the noble letter, and we also are going to waterlog it so that it gets all of that good warpiness to the parchment itself. The first thing that we're going to do different with this one, though, is this is not super well-kept mansion parchment. This is going to be more Thieves Guild parchment, so I am going to crinkle this up. That's going to give it all kinds of wrinkles and texture, and it will feel more gritty and grimy. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to break out some dirt. We're going to take this and then we're going to wipe it all over the parchment. That's going to give a whole bunch of color variation, which is really great, but also it will again send some subtle messages to our players that this was maybe kept in some sewer or some dirtier part of the city. The final thing that we need to do to get this ready and to show our players that it was stabbed into a pillar of the inn that they are staying at is going to be to pull out a knife, and then I just use a cardboard box and use that to stab down into the paper, and now it will always have that nice little knife reminder right in the middle of it so that the players know that these people mean business. My favorite part about this, by the way, is the line that I had in here that says, "And feel free to keep this dagger as a gift. Joran says you'll need it." That is an amazing flex for the bad guys to give to the players. Like, yeah, here's a weapon. Trust me, you're gonna need it. I'm pleased with this one. On to the next one. So let's fast forward this scenario a little bit to add some narrative to this video. The players are gonna go find those thugs that would dare threaten them. So they go find them and they beat them up good. They absolutely just decimate them, and two of them manage to get away. The players eventually end up finding their secret hideout, and in their secret hideout they find scraps of maybe a letter that never got sent but that got burned because whoever wrote it didn't want that information getting out to the world. So the burned letter is a great tool to use when giving your players information, because what that gives you the opportunity to do is burn away pieces of it so they only get the information that you want them to see, while kind of teasing the fact that there's information that they can't see and was burned away. So for this, I wanted to use a more casual font. I wanted to use language that implied that kind of same Thieves Guild feel, but I also then wanted to imply some subservience because I want this to be a lower person who is talking up to their boss. They say things a lot like, "The news ain't good, boss," and "Let me tell you, boss, Poe is hurt bad." So this is implying this is someone talking up to the leader of their organization. Smart players could put together the fact that Joran happens to be the name of this person, if that's their real name. The final thing is this is a letter, like an actual letter. It's not meant to be a decree or some kind of an invitation. So the thing is that this one is going to be formatted like a letter. So for this one, when it came to printing, I'm going to print it exactly the same, but the one difference is I'm going to just use regular computer paper that I have. This is not anything fancy other than the fact that it is a cream color. This will just give you the idea that you don't have to use the fancy parchment paper to do this and it be effective and look really great for your players. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and print this the same. We are going to cut it out the same. We are going to crinkle it the same, make it warpy and wavy the same. But the next step that we're going to do is we're going to burn it because we want parts of this to be burned away so the players don't know if they got the whole thing or not. So I'm just going to pull out my little click lighter and I am going to start to burn around the edges. Okay, so normally I do this outside. This is the first time I've ever tried to do it inside, and as you would expect, smoke goes everywhere when you burn stuff inside. So don't do that. That was a bad choice. I'm gonna go outside, I'm gonna finish it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. With my game room smelling quite smoky and all of that done, here is what the final product looked like, and it just looks so great. Your players will see that the information was trying to get burned. That will tell them that this is information that the group in question didn't want getting out. There's just a lot of implication here, which I really love with any kind of prop or thing like this that you do in a role-playing game. But with that said, that is number 3. So now we have 3 cool props like this. We have the noble letter, we have the stabbed warning, and we have the burnt letter. All of these are super useful, but the good news is this is only the beginning. There are so many other options of things you can use this format to showcase to your players. It could be things like ingredient lists and recipes for potions and poisons, and now you have your characters scavenging around to try and find these rare ingredients. It could be things like a journal entry that shows what some NPC did for a week of time that lets the players know certain things that happened during that week. It could be something like an entry ticket to a ball or a theater show or something like that the bard or rogue of the party can then forge copies so that the whole party can get in. And that amount of props that are given in your game just can continually get your players invested more and more over and over. Let's step it up even more. What if your big bad evil guy has his lair in an old abandoned factory? You could take and put orange rust stains on the paper to send an implication of that to your players. Maybe a noble has something for one of the player characters. You could have them spray perfume all over the note, and then when the players receive the note, even though it's not signed, they could all make perception checks or history checks to know if they recognize the very familiar perfumed scent. All of these are subtle ways that you can just up that just one little click, and now your game can have just that much more packed punch when your players sit down to it. I don't know if you're as excited about this as I am, and this certainly is something that is not a new concept by any means, but it is something that I think every DM should be doing. But all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave me a like and a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you have, please share this video with a friend. There is no faster way to grow a small YouTube channel than to share their videos. But with that said, that's all I've got for this week. Until next week, I'll be seeing you.